for four more Desert Island X. So we are back once again with Mr. Tom Martell. Tom, thanks again for being with us. Very informative, great stuff in the first segment there, talking about the decks that made you famous in some respects and made you the player that you are. Before we get into the next set of four, I want to ask you a little bit more about chess, because you mentioned that you played a lot of chess competitively.
Mhm.
I can't play chess to save my life. So what is it that so many great Magic players have that they derive from chess? Because you're certainly not alone in having this chess and Magic link. What's going on there?
Sure. I mean, I think just chess gives you like a really good analytical framework for how to approach decisions. Obviously, in chess, it's much more calculated. You can actually find the answer through calculation. Whereas in Magic, there's usually some elements of imperfect information and bluffing that come in, more inferred knowledge. But you look at someone like Sifka, who's an incredibly strong chess player. He's certainly by far the best Magic chess player crossover that there exists.
Hmm.
And he's just you look at the deck like eggs plays right into that wheelhouse. Let's take a really complicated set of like decision trees and let me just kind of brute force through them and find the right answer and play solitaire. And so like you kind of saw that in his early play style was finding Magic decks that really rewarded being a strong chess player.
Hmm. So, do you, as a musician, if I'm standing in a lift, elevator for you,
Hmm.
sorry, um, I hear music differently than a lot of other people. To me, it isn't just background noise, it's this chord progression and these instruments doing this, and I'm working out who might have composed it or whatever it is. Those are just, in the background, they're background processes. When you look at new Magic cards, is there an element of chessness to your analysis?
Somewhat. I mean, so chess is at its core kind of a game of pattern recognition. Kind of. I think a lot of it kind of ultimately boils down to that. And so in Magic, you're looking for patterns. Certainly, when you're seeing new cards, you're trying to place them into context because you can't evaluate things in a vacuum. So it's like, oh well, this is kind of like this other card, which was good, but it has elements of this other thing which make it better or worse. And then maybe apply like a format filter on top of that. So, and I expect in this current format, you know, this effect to be better than normal. And so you kind of sum that stuff up to come up with an evaluation. And certainly chess helps with that.
Right. I certainly feel that some of the most exciting moments that I have of discovery when I deal with people like you and the pros is when they make that explicit verbal connection between cards. You did this earlier in the show today, where you said, well, you know what? We thought, hang on, if Squadron Hawk is good because it turns 1/1s into multiple 1/1s, then look how powerful Lingering Souls is going to be because that makes multiple 1/1s that makes multiple 1/1s. That's
Hmm.
clearly going to be great. And you absolutely just went, here are two cards. This is why I know that in a vacuum at least, card number two is going to be good because card number one was good and this is better.
Right.
And I think so many people find that really hard. And here we are, we're coming up to pre-release weekend. Everyone's about to go and play with a stack of Dragons of Tarkir cards and a few Fate Reforged cards. And I really should have like just put some Dragons of Tarkir boosters on there. That would have been great. But no, I don't have any. I don't, honestly. But you look at that and you think, how do you make the connection between this 2/2 flyer for 4 and this 2/2 flyer for 4, whether it's an Abzan Skyguard, whatever it turns out to be? And I just feel that's one of the biggest skills that the pros have that they can pass on to people. Like you've said it now, and lots of people go, okay, now I get why there is this link. And it
Hmm.
seems obvious, but there are so many, thousands and thousands of cards, like Anne Haverin and Autumn Willow, it's being able to make that link. Is there a skill to being able to make those neural connections?
Yeah, I mean, it's just again, it's just finding ways to process lots of information. And so when you're playing Magic, if it's the scope of one game, you're getting a ton of information and data thrown at you. And how do you make heads or tails of that? In the context of looking at a new set, it's even more so. And so, just how do I get my bearings? I need to find something. And so, for some people, it's going to be let me look at historical cards and draw upon that. For other people, it might be well, let me look at kind of like you look at like Luis's set reviews, right, with these numerical systems, and I think, okay, well, like a 2-2 flyer for 3 is like a 2.5 or a 3 or whatever it is. Let me use those as some benchmarks and compare this. But you need points of comparison, and that's what it's. I think as you play Magic more and as you get better at it, you can make stronger inferences from less complete data. And also you can because you just if your brain just gets better at it, it just practices that. And also you just have a much larger data set, so more obscure things can trigger something. Say, oh, this is like that deck I played 7 years ago, or this is like a card that I saw in Masks block that did a lot, was powerful then. Because you look at something like, as an example, a card like Rising Waters, which for people who have been started playing Magic last decade will have no idea what I'm talking about. But it was a card that much like Winter Orb, which we saw from a deck list, from my first set of 4 decks. You look at that in an abstract, they print that card today, and someone sees it and says, "Oh, this doesn't seem very powerful." But those of us who've been playing for a long time can go all the way back, 15 years and say, "Oh, this is an incredibly powerful effect, and I know it, and I know how to exploit it. Let me figure out how to do that."
Yeah, wasn't that the Pro Tour where there were 7 Rebels decks that finished 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and a Rising Waters deck that won the Pro Tour?
I believe that's correct. It was definitely the best deck in that format.
True. Yeah, sure. I think that's true. All right, well, let's get to the 4 decks that got away, potentially. We'll see. These are decks that Tom didn't play, so here we go. Tom joining us on the screen, and we're going to look, first of all, at Academy. This is Tommy Hovey from Pro Tour Rome 1998. 4 Ancient Tomb, 3 City of Brass, 4 Tolarian Academy, 4 Tundra, 4 Volcanic Island, 4 Lotus Petal, 4 Mana Vault, 4 Mox Diamond. Look at all those artifacts, and then a ton of instants: Abeyance, Intuition, Power Sync, Stroke of Genius, Time Spiral, Windfall. Tom, what does this deck do?
So this deck, it goes off very quickly using Tolarian Academy to just make a ton of mana, and then power out like a large X-Spell to deck your opponent. So it can use Mind Over Matter, which is a blue enchantment, which lets you discard a card to tap or untap a permanent, to untap its Tolarian Academy, tap it for even more mana, play more spells, and then keep going off. There are various flavors of Academy decks that were faster or slower, more interactive or less, and it got multiple cards banned. Randy's in the chat. I'm sure Randy was playing something like this around that same time. I know the CMU version of this deck was also very famous. I picked a kind of a blanket, just Academy as a whole, because I wasn't really playing competitive Magic at this point in time. I think it would have been fun to play a deck like this. These decks were largely gone when I started playing competitively, or they're on the very tail end of kind of this level of power. So I missed out on that, but they seem like a blast to play, and although I imagine a format full of this would not be very fun.
Yeah, and worth saying to people that Stroke of Genius is an absolute poster child for a card that looks like it's meant to do one thing and gets utterly broken by doing something completely different. Stroke of Genius looks like you have, let's say, 6 mana, you pass the turn with your counterspell in hand, they don't do anything you want to counterspell, you go fantastic, you tap your mana, and you go, I'm going to stroke myself. That's right, it's still as filthy as it sounded then. I'm going to stroke myself and get a few cards in hand. Oh look, it's a card advantage spell, it's a blue card draw spell. No, it's a kill spell. The target player is not you, it's them. And you sink all this mana into it and go, I tell you what, why don't you draw all the cards in the world ever? It's like Millstone, but doing it 28 times in a row.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why they banned stuff.
Well, I mean, the modern player is certainly familiar with Sphinx's Revelation, right? Which is an incredibly powerful card from Standard recently, where you can't do that, right? Because it's you draw the cards, you gain the life, and we're all used to that mode as being, in of itself, extremely powerful in control decks. But when you also give it that flex slot of, and also this can be a kill condition in your combo deck, that the first 3 of them you target yourself, you draw your whole deck, you get 45 cards in your hand, and then you say, okay, you draw 80. Is pretty absurd.
Yeah, I'll just hang on to that line. You got 45 cards in hand, they draw 80. Lovely. Let's move on. So that was Academy, and next I'm going to take you to a deck which we've given the version from Kai Buddha, Blue Red Tricks, Pro Tour New Orleans 2003. Now, at this point, I'm just going to derail our conversation slightly, Tom, because I'm going to go over to our Twitch page and I'm just going to read people the bit that says combo. And it says, want to keep the accumulated knowledge coming on Downtime, No need to brainstorm. We can't do this thing by force of will alone. We want to make Downtime must-see TV, and for that we need your help to finish the combo. We've got big plans for the show. You might say, illusions of grandeur. We want to give away amazing prizes, the kind of prizes that can send players at World to compete in Premier events, or the kind of giveaways that can really boost your trade folder. But we know what it costs to run Downtime. We added it up with a counter spell, and it's a lot. So we can't do it forever without your help. So follow your intuition, make our illusions a reality, help to fill our merchant scroll, and complete the combo, donate. So true story, I was having a conversation with Simon, my producer, and he says, Rich, do you have a word for donating? Because, different people, they have these different, they make up words like schmizzle or something, and they just come up with a word, and then you can sort of invite people to do that. And I said, there's got to be something to do with magic. And it turns out that the best word for donate is, in fact, donate. So if you choose to support us, we thank you. And if you don't, please don't go away. Please enjoy us forever and more for the huge sum of no cash pounds, because we love having you here, and it is your show, and you make it by being here. So thanks for that, Tom. And he didn't pick this just for me, just so I could do that, I promise.
Tom, the chat, don't blame me for that. I had nothing to do with the link between this deck list and that piece.
That is true.
I generically listed Illusions Donate as a concept, and for me it encompasses two kind of broad categories. There's this deck here, also the Necro version, Tricks, which came out a few years earlier during kind of when Necropon was at its peak, and I think both those really highlight this just kind of pioneers this combo deck based around a blue combo, so you can pitch the pieces to forcible and they're redundant, but then also just hand it over to the opponent.
Yep. There's something so deliciously elegant about, in a way, something of mine always kills you. It's my lightning bolt or my Baneslayer Angel, but it's the idea that it isn't mine anymore when it kills them. There's just something so fabulously elegant about that. It's one of the great ways to kill in Magic history.
Yeah, it's like when you grab the person's hand and you make them hit themselves with their hand, you keep asking them why you're hitting yourself. And that's kind of what that sort of slapstick style of humor. You kind of get that same parallel here with Illusions Donate. So
yeah, and along the way, I'm not sure that Kai was necessarily too fussed about the humour of donating. I think he was most interested in just the sheer absurdity of how great this deck was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you weren't playing on the Pro Tour at this point. Is this a deck that, had you been in New Orleans in 2003, you would have ended up with, probably?
There's certainly a chance. At that point in time, I played two Pro Tours. I actually played the previous extended Pro Tour, where I played the Rock. I'm not sure. This is my style-ish, but I actually kind of completely stopped playing at Magic at this point, so I wasn't even playing PTQs. So who knows what I would have played. But I'd like to think that something like this would have been, kind of in my wheelhouse.
Okay, so that's deck number 6 in Desert Island decks. We're going to come right up to date, near enough. We go to 2011, and we've put Sam Black's Mono Blue Infect deck from the first ever Modern Pro Tour in Philadelphia, 2011, up on the screen. As you can see, 4 Blighted Agent and a Progenitus. Those two are not the same. And then many spells. Most of them costing a blue. It turns out. Talk us through this one, Tom.
Yeah, so this is kind of the other end of Sam Black's kind of deck construction range. We saw the Aristocrats. Here he's playing a deck that is a combo deck just based around breaking a mechanic, in this case Infect, with the card Blazing Shoal. So the point here is you put Blade Agent into play, you attack, you then can Summoner's Pact for the Progenitus, pitch it to the Blazing Shoal, and give it plus 10/+10 and just kill them in one shot. So it's a one-shot Infect combo deck. I actually played Sam playing for top 8 in this tournament, I guess with 3 rounds to go. I think the total match was 5 turns, or 6 turns, 3 games. He turned 2 me game 1, I turned 2 to him game 2. He turned true me game 3. I think was the way it played out. Maybe one game went 3 turns, but the deck was just busted.
Yes, turn 2. Like sometimes we talk about there's this idea of fundamental turns, or a fundamental turn, and that in a particular format you can generally identify, in a classic old format, let's say, you would go to turn 4 because the control decks would be going land, Counterspell on turn 3, Wrath of God on turn 4. Turn 4 was fundamental, and for the
Mhm.
burn decks, they were going, guy, make another guy hit you, burn you, hit you with 2 guys, can I kill you before you get to Wrath, and have you low enough so that I can get there? But in this modern format, and I thought this was one of my favourite Pro Tours ever, it was because turn 1 was so important, and turn 2 was the mid-game.
Yeah, I mean the decks definitely were very fast for this tournament. I mean, you look at this. Like, I definitely had a turn one kill with the storm deck we were playing at that tournament because you still had both Rite of Flame and Seething Song, so you had so much more fast mana. Um,
Yeah.
there was kind of the precursor to the Amulet of Vigor deck at this point was the counter post decks that had just explosive draws, with lots of fast mana. Um, I would say yeah, it was probably. I mean, I would add one to both those turns. I think typically it was like almost turn two was early, turn three is really the kind of the breaking point for most decks. You look at like Splinter Twin, which obviously
Right.
won that PT. But yeah, I mean all the early turns were hyper important, and they definitely slowed down the format a ton afterwards with a bunch of bannings because they didn't want the horde to be a turn two, turn three format.
Okay, well, we have one more Desert Island deck to go with Tom, and it is, let's take a look. Galdanis Vidig. This is an interesting one. I wonder why he's chosen this. Blue Green Spirits, Pro Tour Barcelona, so that's Avacyn restored in 2012. We've got 4 Increasing Savagery and 3 Silent Departure. Sorry there, just get out of the way for you, for those of you wanting to recreate the deck. And then we've got Dungeon Geist of St. Traft, Invisible Stalker. You see, I think Invisible Stalker just went in this deck because of all the pros complaining about it in draft all the time. They went, no, I'm going to do this to you and see how you like it, Pro Tour people. Tell me about this deck.
Yeah, I mean, this is so I ended up not playing this deck at the PT. I played a much worse blue white red control deck that was designed by Patrick Chapin, which just didn't work out it was a fine deck in the abstract, but didn't really work out in that meta game.
Mm-hmm.
This deck, Sam came up with it the night before the PT. No one had played any games. Literally, they played 10 games against themselves on Apprentice or on kind of workshop or something, and
Yeah.
decided just to run it. And I was a little less cavalier at that point. Although I think today I would have certainly just played it. It has a lot of the elements that I kind of that I like. And this kind of just the ability to just not interact with cards like Geist of Draft and Invisible Stalker and just attack them on a different axis. Especially because I thought going into the turn, I expected one of the critical cards in the turn to be Zealous Conscript. This deck just plays so nicely against that card,
Right.
with those two kind of untargetable angles of attack. That I think had I
Mm-hmm.
had a little more experience, but this was also still pretty early in my kind of return to the Pro Tour, and I didn't have the chutzpah to pull the trigger here.
So that's Galdanis Vidigiris with blue-green spirits. There is Tom Martell on your screen with his 7 Grand Prix top 8, 2 Pro Tour top 8s, the champion of Pro Tour Gatecrash, double Grand Prix champion, so nearly a Team Grand Prix champion in Nashville.
Oh, so
Very,
close.
oh, so close. That was the Matt Nass team. Nass, Wilson, and Jesse Hampton won that one, I think, in the final. That was pretty brutal. But who were you teamed with at that one in Nashville?
So for that one, I was teamed with Shahar Shenhar and Paulo Vito Damarosa. So no
Yeah,
slouches there. I was pretty
Heart-
fortunate to have that
heartbreaking.
team.
Okay, so we're away from decks now. Where is the future for you? First of all, in terms of away from Magic, what are you doing? Are you still lawyering away?
Sure. So I'm actually back to being a lawyer. I took some time off. I actually switched over and was working in finance for a number of years
Hmm.
as a portfolio manager at a hedge fund. But I'm actually
Right,
at a technology company now in Silicon Valley, where I'm the general counsel there. I've been there for almost 4.5 years, so
right, and
trudging
enjoying it.
along.
Now, is it trudging, or is it
Yeah.
something that genuinely you like what you do?
I really enjoy what I'm doing. We have a great team. It's just a lot of fun to work with. There's a group of really bright people. I was the eighth or ninth employee, and we're now have 125. So seeing something grow along that path has also been really rewarding. So I consider myself very fortunate to have the opportunities I've had professionally, and I really enjoy working there.
Well, we will start up our directory of guest services here on Downtime. So the first entry in the book is that if you need a general counsel, you can go to Tom Martell, especially if you work in the tech field. So
Also,
perhaps if
so I should
go
plug
on.
it so quick. If you are a programmer looking for work, also talk to me. So little plug there.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, Those were the Desert Island decks of Tom Martell. Tom, thank you so much for being the very first guest here on Downtime. The chat's been incredibly positive. Thanks for all your expertise. Thanks for being a great representative of the game we all love. We will see you very soon. Best of luck at Pro Tour Brussels. I will,
Sure.
of course, see you there. And meanwhile, enjoy the land of tech and the land of sun and Silicon Valley. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Martell, give him a round of applause, if you would, as we wave goodbye to Tom Martell. Tom, take care. See you very soon. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Rich. Bye.